This episode of the Police One podcast is sponsored by Officer Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting officerstore.com. Hey, welcome back to Policing Matters on policeone.com. I'm your host, Jim Dudley. And check us out on YouTube as well. And then you can check out our two guests today. And we'll have some links and some images for you in the show notes as well. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics from the heart. I was just talking to the two gentlemen off screen, and I am a PAL, or a Police Athletic League supporter. I'm an evangelist of PAL, from my own growing up to a single mom in San Francisco. And then in my own career as my first 10 years as a patrol officer with SFPD, having the opportunities to take kids out on whitewater rafting or canoe or kayak or fishing on the bay, fishing in the ocean, football games, ski trips, backpacking trips, you name it. And so rewarding, not just for the kids, but for the officers themselves. And you're going to hear from these guys how transformative it can be. Well, most agencies do what they think they can to approach kids in our communities, but especially tough to do these days with our thinning ranks and priorities for calls for service. How can an agency devote quality times and interactions with our youth, especially in our underserved communities? Well, the National Association of Police Athletic Leagues is the largest nonprofit youth organization tied to law enforcement, with more than 300 PAL chapters serving 2 million youths ages between 5 and 18 years old. PAL exists to aid in the prevention of juvenile crime by providing mentorship, recreational enrichment, and educational opportunities. And it has new leadership, and it's adding 300 new chapters across the nation and worldwide to achieve their goals. Well, retired Sergeant Ragland is the newly elected PAL president. He grew up as a PAL kid in Philadelphia and spent 24 years as a law enforcement officer with the Philadelphia Transit Police and Henrico County Division of Police prior to retirement in 2013. That's Sergeant Kenny Ragland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Jim.
And Sergeant Christopher Hill is PAL's immediate past president and new CEO. Sergeant Hill retired after 27 years of law enforcement experience. And prior to retiring, he was the supervisor in charge of Community Service Bureau of the Howell Township, New Jersey Police Department. Welcome, Sergeant Hill.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Looking forward to this conversation. Anytime we can talk to someone that understands PAL is a good day.
Yeah, that's right. For most things I talk about on the show, I've got to do a little bit of research and brush up. No need here to commemorate. I'm wearing my last PAL golf shirt to talk to you too. And you are newly elected to the leadership. What's going to be your primary focus, not only across America, but I understand internationally?
Kenny?
Was that okay? Well, being newly elected, first and foremost, I'm excited about being elected simply because, like you, Jim, we were talking earlier. PAL's really the reason why I'm sitting here today is because of PAL. I grew up as a PAL kid in the city of Philadelphia. My mentors were cops to a single mom, and never would have dreamed of going to college if it had not been for PAL. So PAL was a safe haven for me, and to come full circle and to be able to actually found a PAL program and now be working with PAL on a national level to make some wholesale changes that's going to benefit kids nationwide is really exciting to me. To answer your question, during my administration, we're going to have three areas of focus. One is to enhance and improve our infrastructure within the national organization. You know this as a former police officer. If cops were businessmen, they wouldn't be cops. And traditionally, PAL was run just by police officers, and we didn't understand things like branding and marketing and fundraising. So one of the things that we're going to be focusing on under Chris's leadership, we have tremendous synergy together, is to enhance and improve our infrastructure so we can best serve the community. And we can also attract those unrestricted dollars that National PAL needs to impact our local chapters and, more importantly, impact our kids. The second area of focus is going to be the creation of a comprehensive strategic plan to give us a purpose in terms of a direction that we're all following as a national organization, nationally and trickling down to our local chapters. So the creation of a strategic plan will be the second area. And the third will be the development of a nationwide programmatic curriculum along the lines of substance awareness. You and I know that, you know, in terms of behavioral issues, substance issues, things like marijuana, alcohol, opioids, vaping, gambling are major issues in our society, and they're all legal. They're all legal vices now, but they are all open gateways to criminal behavior. So in a very strategic way, our plan is to incorporate a nationwide programmatic curriculum to be able to help our chapters and help our kids.
And if I could just jump in on the international side as well, we have working with Blue Light out of Australia and New Zealand. That's their version of the Police Athletic League. They have been over here to see what we have going on, and we have been over there to see what they have going on. We share ideas and share stories so that we could benefit the youth that we serve and the communities that we serve as best we can. We're looking at other places. I've been contacted by the government of Belgium, Sweden, Switzerland, other places, because they've never seen law enforcement in this light at all. They only know law enforcement as a tool to handle those everyday stressors, right? Or those situations where they've seen that, where we have relationships where law enforcement has come in and become that surrogate parent, that aunt, uncle, cousin, big brother, big sister, whatever role we need to be. And we have relationships where the youth are looking to be more engaged. And it does a couple of things, not only there, but here, but it also helps with recruitment, law enforcement has taken a beating over the years, but now where it was people were knocking down the door becoming law enforcement, that's not the case now. But those youth that come through PAL see the role that officers play in their lives and enjoy that, and now are coming back and want to get involved. So it becomes an instant recruitment tool as well.
Yeah, Sergeant Hill, you just stole my thunder. That was going to be my next question to you too. That why aren't we using it as a recruitment tool? I know in California, there was a Senate bill that moved up the minimum age to hiring a police officer to 21 years old, which had been the case mostly across the country. But as far as cadet programs and internship programs, isn't it the best place to start in our communities with these kids that are growing up as PAL participants, whether they're cheerleaders or Pee Wee football players or involved in any of the programs? You just said it. It's a fertile ground where we need to build that trust in our community firsthand, not through social media and not through news reports, but kids being able to relate to cops as real people.
One of the things with working with the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the National Sheriff's Association, we can see, because like my former police chief was a PAL kid, right? He came through the PAL program, worked his way up. He was a cadet, an explorer, and PAL kid, now police chief. And, I grew up in PAL as well as Kenny. And so we see the opportunity. And now that the youth are exposed to the side where they're our biggest advocates for combating all that hate. You know, what I like to tell people is during the George Floyd era, when everybody was, you know, defund the police and do all these things and rioting and all this stuff, you didn't see that happen in cities where there was power chapters because the youth and the law enforcement were working together, and the youth knew that law enforcement was on their side. So we didn't have those issues. So you know that it's a great recruitment tool, and it gives the kids an opportunity to really get involved and get divested into what PAL has to offer and what the law enforcement has to offer. Because a lot of kids don't realize, you know, every role that you want to do in this world, whether you know if you want to be a doctor, a accountant, a nurse, a chief, a teacher, whatever, you can get those degrees and get a job in law enforcement, whether it's at the federal level or at the local level, at the prosecutor or the city level. So a lot of our kids didn't know that, and that's what PAL does, expose them to those opportunities.
Right. And Jim, just as you know, Chris's response implies, um, PAL, you know, by engaging, you know, in a PAL program, it kind of changes the paradigm of what's normal out there in society when we look at in terms of the sentiment and the views of law enforcement. Engagement in PAL humanizes the police officer, and it humanizes the profession, and it also exposes the kid to the profession, because in reality, all of us are who we are because of what we've been exposed to, what we grew up with, what's the norms for us, what interests us. And when we can expose young people to law enforcement officers at a very early age, like I was saying before, it humanizes the profession. It makes law enforcement an appealing career path. But to your earlier question, when you were mentioning about, you know, government and localities, in the past, you know, we didn't really have an issue with the recruitment of law enforcement officers. Now that's one of the three major issues that the Department of Justice is exploring, the lack of recruitment in police officers. And what better vehicle than a PAL program to utilize? That's one of the reasons why we have such a great relationship with Department of Justice, is because we address the three major issues that the Department of Justice is focusing on, and if we can just raise the awareness, and that's one of the things under Chris's leadership that we're really going to focus on, is just raising our whole awareness in terms of our branding, our marketing. There are segments of our country where PAL's never been heard of before, not because PAL did not do good work. It was maybe because the community did not see a reason to start a PAL. Well, we want to change that paradigm. We want to help communities, particularly we want to help our kids. We want to help law enforcement in terms of making law enforcement an attractive profession through the engagement. Of course, our main goal is to form positive relationships between youth, you know, and using programs as the platform. But we're focused and we're committed and just getting our government officials, because before, most governments, they don't look at things from the standpoint of long term. It's always a 2, 3, 4 year window. When you talk about investment in PAL and investment in children, uh, I'm pretty sure we're all parents here. We know that investing in our kids is not a 2, 3 year, 4 year endeavor. It's a lifelong endeavor, and that's what we want to create, you know, in our jurisdiction, our community, understanding that, hey, it's a very small investment for a very significant dividend down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're both talking about convincing at least four segments of why PAL is a worthwhile endeavor. And you already addressed the government officials and maybe the people in the COPS office that are holding the purse strings, right, for funding. But you're also, you know, trying to convince the kids that you're trustworthy and you want to build confidence and you're really doing it for them. But then you've also got the parents. Have you come into a situation where you've had to convince the parents and guardians of kids that it was safe and it was indeed a worthwhile effort to allow their kids to participate in a PAL activity?
Well, I know for me, for my experiences, it hasn't been difficult because uh, oftentimes throughout the country, Pal's got the best price in town, and that's usually free for for a lot of jurisdictions. So it's not really difficult to convince someone to be engaged in programs that may be free. And you have police officers at the helm. So what better surrogate parents or mentors than to have cops mentor your kids? They're safe. So it's really been an easy sell because let's just be honest here. The most important commodity of any community is its youth. And once you build that relationship with the youth, you have the community. So even though you may have parents that may have some ambiguity or some trepidation of, do I really want to put my kid in a PAL program? But once a kid gets in a PAL program and he develops relationships with cops, it's kind of hard. If the kids love it, the parents are going to love it as well. So it hasn't, in my experience, it hasn't been a difficult sell, but I'm sure Chris is probably going to mention this. I'm pretty sure there's some circumstances and some situations in communities that may have experienced some issues that may have some reluctancy in that area.
100%. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about one case in particular where I had a parent that was adamant about the kid not getting involved with PAL. And when I finally got a chance to talk to the parent, it wasn't really about working with police officers from a negative law enforcement standpoint. It was working with police officers from where they live. So now when you're talking to the cops, you're snitching. You can be considered a snitch. So they were worried about their child's safety. And so one of the things that we had to point out, or I had to point out to them, was that, we become like aunts and uncles, right? And so when your son needs to walk home, we walk home with him. When your child is sitting around at the ballpark, we hang out with them. And next thing you know, we're at the ballpark and we're all playing. Now they want to play with us. And so we utilize that relationship to open that door so they can say he's not so bad. And then you have the parents calling you up, asking you, hey, maybe you can help me with this or that. And, it works. But yes, we definitely have had those situations. And I will tell you that they turn out to be some of the best because they now know that. And it's funny because even in some of the neighborhoods where they don't want us, they still will call us when they hear that strange noise at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss without mentioning our own San Francisco PAL president, Rick Bruce, former colleague of mine, great guy, does everything for the kids. We had a great officer, Mike Costello, same thing, all for the kids. Well, as patrol ranks are thinning and calls for service being the priority, how do you convince a chief to say we still need to put on duty or volunteer resources into that PAL program? What do you tell them? What are the benefits?
So I love this topic because the first thing to get cut is community service programs because they need bodies on the street. So what I tell chiefs are, you're doing yourself a disservice by not having law enforcement in the PAL program. And let me tell you why. The police department is not allowed to to fundraise, right? PALs can fundraise. So we can become that partner, that silent partner that can go out and do those things that to not only free up some time for your officers to come so that we could do it. Like in my PAL chapter here in Jersey, we pay for the K9s, we pay for the tinted windows on the undercover cars, but we do that through we have a private public community partnership where PAL becomes the fundraising arm for law enforcement. And so that chief now realizes that not only by having an officer there, they also have officers there that get to make those relationships within the community. So he sees that as a positive investment. The other thing is, as long as you work with kids now, you don't chase them later, right? If you're working with them every day, you already know how to deal with that child. So for me, it's helped out where we've had kids that have given us information because they don't want that crime in their neighborhood either. And so by being able to utilize that and showing the chiefs how those stats work, because stats are the driving force at the end of the day for law enforcement.
Right.
So that's how we're able to prove to the chief that we can reduce crime by having your officers here as opposed to chasing someone later.
And just to add to what Chris was saying, It's about, Jim, it's really about holistic partnerships. Uh, Law enforcement can't do it alone. Matter of fact, based on the lack of police officers across the country, law enforcement is really exploring the calls in which it responds. What the PAL program does well, and this is best practices, those PAL programs that really thrive are ones where there's a holistic partnership with law enforcement. What I mean by holistic partnership, I mean an equal partnership, law enforcement doing the engagement of the kids, officers based on the resources, partner with the community, private industry, the business community to actually create the infrastructure to, as Chris alluded to, raise the dollars, raise awareness and things of that nature. But I know the audience that you have is a diverse one. I'm gonna say something that might get some butts puckering a little bit, but it's reality because we're all retired cops here. Law enforcement is a culture of command and control. Our culture is one where we want to control, we want to command things, even when we don't have the acumen to do so. So now, I think out of necessity, it's important to get law enforcement, i.e. chiefs, to understand, hey, you can't do it alone, chief. You have to partner with other entities to effectively do the job and serve our community. And PAL is one of those vehicles where if it's a holistic partnership, it can be very successful. And you know who gets all the credit in the public's eyes, Jim? The police department. They get all the credit because the parent, only thing a parent knows is their kid is positively engaged with law enforcement officers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you usually see, I mean, the icon is a patch or a star or a badge, and people make that connection. That's a good point. And I know in San Francisco, our cadet program is based out of PAL, and great, robust program. I can't tell you the number of kids who got accustomed to the police culture through the PAL program, who ended up being cops. One of them just got promoted to lieutenant of the police department. And I remember him as a, I don't know, 14-year-old kid in our PAL cadet program. So that's always gratifying. And like, I think it was Chris who said, you know, rather than chase them, how about running alongside with you? So that's a good point as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, so obviously I've been around PAL for a long time, so I'm very familiar with San Francisco's PAL program, Redwood City, San Mateo. You guys run really good PAL programs out there, and the support that you have from the community is quite interesting because if we went by what we saw online and on social media and all that stuff, we would think that people hated the police, but we know differently, right? Because it's funny, you can be out somewhere and that little kid will come up and ask you for, a picture, an autograph, a handshake or something,
Sticker.
a sticker. They love those bad stickers, right?
Right.
And so it got to the point where I remember having to tell parents, like, stop telling him if you don't behave, that guy's going to take you away. No, we don't need that. We want to tell them that you act right, that guy's going to come and hand you a sticker, And so we do those things and, Kitty or you, one of you mentioned it before, we haven't done a good job telling our story. I mean, we do some amazing things around this country every day. And a lot of it is, goes by the wayside because we weren't bragging about ourselves. But now we have to so that people know what we do. We are changing lives. I mean, you have 3 products on this screen right now that went through the PAL program and we're all doing okay. Right? We're all doing okay.
So far.
Yeah, so far. Depending on who you ask, right?
No, good point. Hey, I want to ask more about a couple of the programs, and one of them is the Know to Protect, KNOW to protect. But first, I want to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Officer Store, equipping protectors with passion. That's how we operate, and it's how we live. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. visit us at officerstore.com. And we're back, and I'm speaking with National PAL CEO and President Kenny Ragland and Christopher Hill, both retired sergeants, both running through that PAL program from start to finish. And I mentioned just before our break the Know to Protect program. What's that all about?
So the Department of Homeland Security started the Know to Protect campaign, same on the platform of See Something, Say Something. And the reason why is year to date, there's been about 800 kids across the U.S. that have committed suicide from being hoodwinked online, right? The sexploitation online where someone has generated AI photos of them and put bodies on them and extorting them to the point where the kids see no way out, and some of them have taken their lives. So the Know to Protect campaign is a campaign designed to teach kids how to who to go to in case they feel like they're being targeted online, but also for parents so that they know how to tell if their kids are being targets of someone online, and then also to spread the word around the country. It's really important because it doesn't matter the age of the child, it doesn't matter the sex of the child. These perpetrators are targeting all of our kids and including our adults, and they're finding no way out. And again, the best thing is, either you're going to give us money or get access to things, or we're going to put this information out. And a lot of our kids have no way of dealing with that. So Department of Homeland Security came up with a new platform to help with catching those predators, but also educating youth and parents and the business world on how to detect if that is going on. So that's what the Know to Protect. We're fully invested. We had a training with all of our PAL chapter directors back in San Diego in May, and we have a youth summit coming up at the end of the month in Charlotte, where they're going to be there talking about it as well, because we need to get this word out. We need to stop this from going on and plaguing our society.
Yeah, that's a great introduction point. Kids in that the early stages of getting online and hanging out on the internet.
It's really today. If I had a graphic, I could put it up, and if I put up Lil at AOL.com, and I put up L1L at AOL.com, unless you're really looking for it, you won't know the difference, right? And so that's how easily these kids can be distracted. They think they're talking to a friend. And next thing you know, they think they can be sending pictures to a friend. Or, as we all know, these predators are very good. They'll never come out and ask you direct questions, but they'll ask questions about your school, about your mascot, and then they can put all those information into online and find out where you are. And all of us have been victim of where someone's come up and say, "Hey, Chris," or "Hey, Kenny," "Hey, Jim, how you guys doing?" And we didn't even know who that person was, but they see a name somewhere, they saw it in a newspaper or whatever. Well, imagine a kid being called by first name. He thinks he's supposed to know that person, or she thinks that. So it's really important that Know to Protect is we want to get it out as fast and as wide as we can.
Yeah, for sure. They are so sophisticated now with AI and audio that can replicate your voice. It sounds like Chris is calling Kenny and saying, "Hey, I need $100 Venmo to me right now at this phone number." And Kenny, being the good guy that he is, I'm sure he's sending it.
You haven't met Kenny, have you?
Wow.
He knows I would send it to him. But as Chris was saying, it's all about protecting our children, and National PAL being in front of the curve.
Yeah.
And doing all we can to protect our children.
Okay.
It's
Go ahead.
interesting. Quick, Kenny said National PAL being ahead of the curve. As you stated in your opening, National PAL is a law enforcement, as a youth serving law enforcement organization that was designed by police officers. And it's funny because other agencies are trying to do that, right? The Big Brothers, that's Bigs and Blue, Boys and Girls Club are trying to get law enforcement involved. Everybody's trying to, but we're already there. We're already doing it. We've been doing it for over 100 years. So, let's continue to make this happen. Let's continue to talk about all the success stories. Muhammad Ali wouldn't have been a boxer without Powell, right? You talk about Colin Powell. You talk about, Alicia Keys, and just keep going and going and going. We have quite a few people that are in Congress that were Powell members. But again, it's not something that we bragged about because it was just something that we did. We lived it. It's who we were. But now we have to tell our story, and that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, and Colin Powell came to San Francisco and he visited with the PAL cadets, and he went to our Boys and Girls Clubs. And he is a charismatic figure, to be sure. We take kids, like I said, whitewater rafting, canoeing, kayaking, football games, backpacking, all of that, pee-wee football, cheer. But when it comes down to it, how can we express the effectiveness of PAL? I mean, it's not like we have crime stats where we could say from here to here, we lowered by X%. How do you, when asked, when you're interviewed by a news program, a congressman, a parent, how do you translate what you do in PAL to the effectiveness that it has on their children?
Well, actually, Jim, a lot of PAL programs are actually identifying data. I know Chris's PAL, where the local PAL, where he was, and the local PAL that I worked in, and a lot of PALs across the country. And matter of fact, it's interesting you bring that up because that's one of the things that we're looking at in National PAL is actually identifying data to speak to our success. We all knew how successful the PAL program is. Like I can tell you the PAL program that I actually run locally, over 99% of the kids have a positive attitude about law enforcement. Over 50% make the AB honor roll in the after school program. Over 97% go off to college, trade school, or the military in our youth leadership council. So we know that the program is effective. One of the things that we're trying to do, and I talked about infrastructure earlier in this segment, was to start identifying, creating our infrastructure and doing that very thing you talked about, becoming evidence-based, where as a national organization, we could speak to statistics. Yes, we can't talk about the crime in a particular jurisdiction, but we can in very specific ways talk about the kids that are byproducts of our program and what they matriculate to and how they conduct themselves through their participation in PAL.
Yeah, great stuff. I can't wait to see your charts.
Yeah, and we actually, Kenny talked about it. One of our big things is once we get them, they don't leave, right? We have them. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I started a long time ago, and I started it because I was just being crazy, is my daughter was 4 years old and it was Christmas morning. She ran downstairs and she jumped into the tree, basically, right? And I was like, not good morning, not hello, So I gathered up some of her things and we went to the hospital that morning, and we handed out things to people in the hospital because I thought she needed to know. And so that was 30 years ago. And this past Christmas that we showed up at the hospital, because we made it a yearly thing, we had 72 PAL kids show up, and most of them were alumni members because they remember that day. They remember those times when we went. And so to talk about what they're doing now and how we keep them and how we've engaged and changed their lives, we look at the number of, name the profession, we have it, name the branch of service, we have it. We know we're doing some good things. As a matter of fact, we utilize our kids to be our mouthpiece to bring in more kids. So, we don't really have to spend a lot of money on advertising when it comes to that. But from a global standpoint, a national standpoint, that's where Kenny was talking about our infrastructure, making sure that the world knows who we are. It's not that we're bragging, but we're doing some good stuff and we need to open it up to more kids.
Yep.
And just to add to what Chris was saying, and a very important element, he made my antennas go up. It's not only just a programming piece, it's the very essence of a person. It's the value piece. What values, what principles do you live by? a lot of kids can't articulate that. And when you look at society today, we live in such a self-serving society today, in a non-consequential society. In PAL, there's consequences, good and bad, for your actions. And that's one of the things that we instill in our young people, but a sense of giving back. Community service is a big part. When you look at PAL programs, there's a lot of volunteerism in PAL. So what we try to emphasize in our children is giving back through community service days. That's a big part of PAL. And you're not going to find many programs where an emphasis is serving fellow man and giving back, of thinking not only yourself, but thinking of others. And particularly, you're not going to find a lot of entities now where consequences are taught. We live in a society today where, when it comes to parenting, unfortunately, a lot of parents are, walking litigators for their children now. And because of that, children suffer. Children suffer because they're not taught how to deal with consequences, how to navigate through conflict and develop conflict resolution. So in PAL, and this is across the board, it emphasizes consequences.
Mm.
And that's what we're instilling. So consequences, you just don't learn at 18 years old. That has to be developed and that has to be taught through your formative years. So consequences, through giving back, those are all pillars of PAL when it comes to engaging young people.
For sure. Taking personal responsibility and gaining those tools that you're talking about. So I want to wrap it up. I totally appreciate the time that you're both giving to us today. But we talk about the kids, talk about the benefits of the kids, the parents. Some of these kids are really vulnerable, maybe, single kids to a single mom, um, taking alternative paths if they don't have PAL. What about the benefit to the officers? I know the benefit that I had experienced when being a PAL volunteer and going out on these trips. What do you talk about to cops that are maybe reluctant to be a volunteer or participate in a PAL program?
Well, we've all heard oh, you're just a kindergarten cop, right? You just, you're just babysitting. Well, what I like to do is I like to challenge them to come out. And once they come out, it's hard to get them to leave. I'm like, all right, go home. But one of the things that I can say is that it's been more where a law enforcement officer came in to help a kid, and the kid helped the cop. Right. And I can vouch for that, because you can see it when the other night I went to the scholarship night for all the seniors graduating, and the number of law enforcement officers that walked across the stage to be that person that the kid asked to go up. And it was not just my local department, it was state police, federal agencies, military police. And I was like, wow, that these guys, not family members, were asked by a kid, and that guy showed up in uniform, no less. That tells you, and those guys were like, a lot of cops, when the clock strikes a certain time, they're gone. Not these guys. And so I can tell you by the smiles on the faces and the way they showed up that is definitely a life-changing experience. And most of the guys that come into PAL don't leave. Even if the chief pulls them out, they still find a way to stay involved and engaged.
Right.
Yeah.
And to Chris's point, Jim, what we do is, if you want to call it a job, because I don't call this, and I'm pretty sure Chris agrees, I don't call this my vocation. This is my avocation. What we do is of the heart, and it's all about people. And most police officers, they want to be police officers because they wanted to help the community through protecting and serving. And what better way to help our community and change the life of a young person? Very quickly, and Chris brought it up and talk about people not leaving. I had a colleague of mine. We both retired around the same time, and he financially he was pretty secure, but he didn't really have purpose. He spent most of his career as a detective, and I encouraged him to come out to the PAL program and give us a try. He was reluctant, but initially he came out, participating, working with the kids. 4 years later, he's still with us. He said, I've never had anything in my life that brought me more joy than to be able to impact young people's lives, to engage young people and share. So he says, hey, I'm with you guys. I wish I had done it, sooner.
Yeah, it's a great story. Yeah, we should get that. Should get him to write an article and send it to every agency in America.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, any parting thoughts? I want to thank you guys for taking time to be with us today.
Well, I will say the best for last, so I'll go first, Chris, being the CEO. Thank you first and foremost, Jim, for providing us with this platform. Pal, we're going to continue to do the great work. We got a lot of exciting things coming up. What I would like to really see is, and I think this is going to happen through our enhancements, is just we raise awareness across the country and get more people involved, because it really does take a village to raise a child. And we're hoping that by raising awareness, more and more people will become familiar with PAL, want to participate through volunteerism. If they can't do that, dollars always help. It costs money to put on programs. So if anyone hears this, or sees this actual interview and you want to get involved, please reach out to us, nationalpal.org. If you want to donate, we have a donate button on our website.
Awesome.
And what I want to say is 3 things that I've heard over the years at PAL, that taglines that really mean a lot to me. PAL, when I first came in, we used to say we fill playgrounds, not prisons. Then we used to say that not every superhero wears a cape. And then the final one is that every kid needs a PAL. And that one is so true, because at the end of the day, we all need someone. A kid always going to need somebody to have that conversation with, no matter what that conversation is. So as Kenny said, resources are big, resources are important, and our kids are our #1 resource. So let's make sure that we do all that we can to not only put them on the right path, help guide them, lead them, and be there for them. And thank you for having us on the show. We really appreciate it.
Well, hey, my pleasure. Thank you both, Sergeant Kenny Ragland and Sergeant Christopher Hill, both retired, CEO and past president and current president of the National Police Athletic League. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show, but also for what you're doing for the kids across America.
You got it. Really appreciate it.
All right. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you're not involved in your own agency, PAL, check out the national website, check out your own agency's website. And if you're not a sworn officer, then maybe think about what these 2 gentlemen had to say about volunteering at events, or, hey, break out that checkbook. There's a donate button on their website. All right, let me know what you think. Drop me a line at policingmatters@policeone.com. policingmatters@policeone.com. Happy to answer your email about the show, or who you'd like to listen to in the future, or what you want to hear about. All right, take good care and be safe. And I hope to talk to you again real soon.